I pen this with the utmost seriousness and with lack of total remorse. I had accomplished a great deal of good for all parties involved, and I commend them for their efforts. I killed Vincent Brown by his own hand, orchestrated with careful precision so the burden of responsibility will no form be connected to us through no sober fault of our own. The plan was simple: get Vincent intoxicated and challenge him to a game of Russian roulette. This motivation for doing so? Simple: his drunken antics that result in embarrassing all those involved, especially for Jason and myself. We couldn't tolerate being friends with a buffoon who couldn't hold his drink. Vincent was a man of average intelligence but an idiot when drinking, his sense of logic and concern thrown into the wind as if to say it's worthless. Embarrassing stories and otherwise deeply personal thoughts confided with him previously coming out into the open. Nobody needed to know our life stories, and our mutual trust with Vincent quickly deteriorated. His knowledge of these events had to go. 1 week before our little game, Jason and I confided with each other in private. Drinking away to the hardest scotch found in my cabinet, fully tolerating the brew. Jason expressed his sadness and briefly cried when mentioning to me of Vincent's latest antics and what he had said. Word got back to Jason that Vincent publicly revealed Jason's recent loss of his wife and only daughter in a car accident. Hearing his momentarily painful wails lit a fire under me, and I knew something had to be done. I recall slamming my glass down on the table with enough force to crack it. I reached my boiling point, and initially Jason jumped from my sudden action, but locked eyes with me. I displayed no emotion, not even of anger or malice. "Let's kill him," I murmured in a serious tone. In response, Jason looked at me with conflicted expressions, as if the mood swings of alcohol were killing it. I knew Jason too well to consider that being the truth. Jason was reasoning with cognitive dissonance, measuring the good from the bad with this proposal of mine. I continued to sip my scotch, waiting for his better judgment to pass. Jason, under pressure, resembled a turtle without its shell. The man can't handle important decision-making. Jason set his drink down on the table, breaking the silence that came between us. He looked at me with radiating confidence in his resolution. "You do know I'm allowed to carry a gun, right?" I turned to him and responded, "Yes, a revolver, isn't it?" He nods his head, and I wanted to smile and give a slight chuckle. It's all going to plan, I say to myself, already drafting the blueprints to what is to be done amid his mental chaos. Continuing the streak of brilliance, I immediately cut into the thought Jason had following making the decision to kill Vincent. "What's the plan, Jason?" "Here's what we're going to do. I will not repeat myself in describing the plans to end Vincent's life, but Jason wholeheartedly agreed to it. I scheduled a hangout for the following weekend with Vincent over the phone. What I can readily recall from our conversation is that it was completely casual with no hint of animosity between us, joking and laughing all the way. Vincent never issued a single apology for what he said about Jason's recent loss, but in my mentioning of his drunken antics, with full intent on discussing his behavior, he interrupts me. Continuing in his joking manner, I remember him saying to get the drinks ready, sounding giddy while mentioning the alcohol. I could only respond in the same tone, mustering myself to arouse the high spirits of a hangout. "Will do," I dutifully respond in the same tone, mobilizing a loud roar out of Vincent. his excitement ringing out with a drawn-out "Yeah!" that will ring in my ears until the end of time. It was loud enough to have a mosh pit to turn towards him and question if he had a mental disorder. I saw it as a personification of his buffoonery. We said our goodbyes and ended our call. I returned to my usual demeanor and placed my phone back into my pocket. The game had been set. The night arrived and our plan was taking its first steps into motion. I reached into my cabinet once again and pulled out the same hard scotch Jason and I had drunk the previous weekend. Vincent didn't discriminate when it came to a drink of choice. I pulled out 3 glasses in preparations for their arrival. Picking one of them, I decided to pour myself a pint and ready myself for our game of chance. About a half hour later, Jason arrives and is noticeably worried. All the confidence in his face drained from the Jason who agreed to the plan the previous weekend. His cognitive dissonance took over and he was shaking to the core. He couldn't back out now. He's already in too deep. I got right into business as soon as I closed the door behind him, cementing his status as a collaborator in an accidental death. Let me see it, I say seriously. Let me see it, I say seriously. He turns to me quickly in a fluster, proceeding to open his jacket and pulling up his shirt to reveal the butt end of a revolver sticking out from his jeans. Jason then shifts to reaching into his pants pocket, pulling out 6 shells fit for the barrel. I do him the kind gesture of pouring him a glass of scotch to calm his nerves, with a subtle smile that I believe Jason took notice of. I say this because all sense of doubt and worry drained from both his expressions and body language as I turned to hand him his drink. Jason once again made his decision and realized he's in too deep and far beyond the point of no return. As he moves past me, I turn to him and say, even in his drunken stupor, his judgment is poor. When he agrees to play, as you're placing the revolver on the table, passingly mention you always carry it. And if he possibly asks first, answer casually. No suspicion will amass out of him regardless. I spent some waiting time practicing my spin and timing of the chambers for another half hour, in accordance with our plan to end him in the second round, and the doorbell rings. I open the door and Vincent is there, looking all ready for a little venture of endless drinking and partying as he's so accustomed to. Inviting him inside, he takes a seat at the table, and I hand him his glass, filling it with the hard scotch, and he immediately pounds it down without trouble. That's some amazing stuff. What is it? It's some scotch I prefer. Really seals in the flavor with its mix of cherry and standard alcohol. He grabs the bottle and continues to pound glass after glass, working himself up into a frenzy mode, fit for a congratulatory party or a family reunion. Jason and I, however, to continue to take our drinks slowly, wanting to stay sober until his life has made an abrupt end. We continue throughout the night without incident, talking about life and joking. Vincent, however, was getting more drunk with every downing of the glass he takes. We sat at a table, and taking notice of his plastered state, I mentioned out of the blue, "Say, let's play a game." Vincent perks up at the notion. "Sure, man, you know I'm a sucker for games. What do you have in mind?" I turned to look at him. How about a little game of chance?" Internally smirking as I said this out loud. It was go time for Jason and I. "Oh, a game of chance, you say?" Vincent says amid hiccuping. He made it to the point of no return. "Shall we play a little game of Russian roulette?" Vincent, immediately interested in his poor judgment, agrees. But then he soon turns to look at his glass and asks about the odds of retrieving a revolver. Jason butts in and mentions about being a legal holder and carrying it everywhere with him. Vincent psyching himself up for the game, disregarding the fact that one of us will possibly die doing this. But it was Vincent being Vincent. No worry about his own safety was running through his mind. Put 3 bullets in there to start. That way, when we start, we have even odds of winning. A brave move on his part. I agreed with him, only to initially drive away possible doubt in doing this. Jason loads up the revolver with the 3 shells next to each other, followed by consecutive empty spaces. Pass it to me. I'll spin it and take the first chance. Jason complies, and I take the revolver in my hands. Looking at it briefly and turning away while spinning it, timing my stop correctly so we would all survive into the second round. I place the revolver at my right temple and pull the trigger. The sound of a click of the igniter followed and ensured my survival. I breathed a feigned sigh of relief, keeping in character with the moment as I pass it to Jason, who wasn't faking his nervousness. He places the gun to his temple and pulls the trigger, shaking hysterically as he's doing it. An important decision about facing death was playing in front of Vincent and me. The same click followed, and Jason was still among us, and not with his loved ones. He legitimately breathed a sigh of relief as this moment came to pass by without incident, passing it to Vincent, who takes the revolver, and rather than placing it at his temple, he puts it in his mouth, pointing to the crown of his head. The man did throw caution to the wind in this state. Surely the gun will smell of alcohol when the second round begins. Vincent pulls the trigger, and according to plan, he lives. We all give ourselves a rounding applause for surviving the first round, to ease the tension of this dangerous game. That one was too easy, Vincent says victoriously, opening the barrel to see how Jason placed the bullets into the barrels. Place 4 this time and set it apart from each other. That way the game will start to become interesting. It was as if Vincent read my mind, but then I intervene. Since I went first, I believe you, Jason, should start it. After all, it is your revolver. Jason reluctantly agrees, and Vincent downs his drink, not taking note of how Jason is placing the bullets. I carefully watch how he performs this task. He places the shells in a formation that ensures a space between 2 casings amongst another 2, that are side by side with each other. This was allowing us a decent percentage of survival for only 2 of us. After carefully placing the bullets and taking a deep breath, he locks the barrel with a click of a gun, confirming it, and proceeds to spin the barrel, beginning with himself as the first victim of this now deadly game. Shaking sporadically, he places the gun to his temple. Jason survives. I can recall that exact moment his body language returns to normal, as it always does when a decision was made, but a grave silence fell between all of us, because Jason and I knew what was about to come. Jason and I knew what was about to come. Jason releases a sigh that contained this anxiety about facing his own death, but by doing so, he has now come to grips that death will be visiting the person to his right. He hands the gun to Vincent, and once again pulls the same stunt with the barrel in his mouth as before. As one can imagine, the result was gruesome. I will not confess my actions regarding the location of Vincent's body, but I can recall Jason was unnerved with fear while I was stone cold in emotion. He instantly regretted what he took part in, begging God to forgive him for what he has done. I pulled the car over in a sudden stop and screamed at him in the car to pull himself together, and what had been done, and there's no turning back. The point of no return has been crossed. It's been a week since then, and Jason and I haven't spoken since. And probably upon seeing each other again, we'll never speak about this for the rest of our lives. Vincent has appeared several times on the news, declared a missing person. His upset family is doing interviews, crying and begging the late Vincent to return home, surely not wanting to face the possibility of him being dead, despite that being true to only Jason and myself. They're about as lost as Jason is when making important decisions, cracking under pressure. I hear some sporadic, forceful knocks at my door. I think I'll go answer them. If you, unlike certain large corporations, enjoy horror and being scared, you can support this channel on Patreon located in the link in the description below. Good night.